Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this November 10th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on First Amendment. I play it at 11 a.m. Pacific time as well. And of course, if you can't get it there, go to my long standing website, arcticbeacon.com, arcticbeacon.com, and we've been called the alternative to the alternative media. So you're getting a little bit more than you're even going to get on that internet, which many people think is getting you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. But let me tell you, you're getting a lot of BS there as well. So come here and we're going to give you a chance to do some critical thinking, something that many Americans have not understood for a long time. Make up your own mind. Do your own fact-checking. Do your own work. You can't help it these days because you can't trust the media. You can't trust much of the alternative media. I would say 95% of it. And you got to do your own critical thinking even when you come to this show. Don't take everything I say as the gospel truth, as they say. However, all my life I've been trying to get to the bottom of why we are in a position in America the way we are. And you can't just look back 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 100 years. You got to go way back. Let's start the show today because, you know, I always talk about the Jesuits and the Vatican-led New World Order and their connection to really the hidden agenda behind the scenes. Now, if anybody in this listening to this show doesn't believe there's a hidden agenda, then why don't you just turn it off and go listen to something else, because you're not going to get it. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you don't believe there's a hidden agenda, then you're going to find most of what I say to be over your head, so to speak. If you do believe there's a hidden agenda, then listen up, and maybe together we can figure out what it is. It's not easy. It's not easy at all. However, I've been working at it ever since I was in Rome, since the early 1980s. So you got to give me a little credit for that. I've stuck with it. Now, let me just say this. I always say Jesuits. There's a lot of people out there go, the Jesuits this, the Jesuits that. Let's be clear. They're the military arm of the Vatican. They always have been, always will be. And they began back in the 1500s to kill Protestants, cut their heads off, get rid of them if they didn't follow the Pope. And they do the same thing today, but a little bit more sophisticated, so to speak. You're not going to see a guillotine in the town square. But let me tell you something. The Jesuits are experts in their deeds of blood. And let's call them the spiritual scoundrels of the world. Call them the financial scoundrels of the world. Call them what you like. The J word, the Jesuits. Oh, they're a nasty bunch. And they're working today, as we speak. In most every avenue that you'll go down this country, you will find them. They're in science. They're in education. They're in our government. In our government. You check everybody that works there. Now, the high people, you're going to find a Jesuit behind them, or they are one. In our Congress, in our Senate, all over the place, in the executive branch. There's no hiding it any longer. People just don't know it. They just have been blind because they've been told another story. They've been given revisionist history. And like I said in my show yesterday, or was it a couple days ago, before Trump was put into office, as the president-elect, I said, people don't even know revisionist history anymore. Our educational system is a joke, a sham. We got to change it. We got to make it better. But the Jesuits don't want thinking people. These spiritual scoundrels, these financial scoundrels, they don't want thinking people. They don't want people to actually know what's going on behind closed doors. They want to keep those doors closed and basically keep you an obedient worker. Yes, working for the owners of our country, who are giving you one story and there's something behind the scenes that's going on. Now, like I said, with Trump coming in, this is a perfect Hegelian dialectic that you're looking at. They give the left power for 8 years. They screw up things royally all over. Then the right wing gets their choice. Now the American worker has its opportunity to strike back. And we got a Congress that's conservative. We got a Senate, but the whole shot now is Republican there. So there's a lot of people, all of these welfare recipients, all these people that really, what's wrong with getting your hands dirty and working a little bit? What's wrong with building something? Our country has been shipping out jobs, been shipping companies, been doing everything. Why not? Let's work. Let's get this thing done, and let's see how long we have before the New World Order plan of destroying Western civilization comes about. And I'm not going to stray away from that. That is their main goal. They want to wipe the middle class out. They want to do the best to get rid of people that have a say and really understand what's going on, have a say in their own life, and they're doing a good job at it. But let's look at their deeds of blood. Do you think these people are just no? What do you think's been following the Clintons since Arkansas? They got a trail of people dying that want to figure out that they're drug dealers, they're crooks, they're criminals, and most of them end up dead. And there's never really any investigation. So the deeds of the Jesuit blood system of killing those who oppose them still goes on today. Now let's look back to what Henry IV said. Now, I could probably go out into the park today, and no one would even care who he was. They wouldn't. Henry IV, they probably think it was some sitcom or something. Well, Henry IV said it was impossible to escape the Jesuits, and he became their victim, though he did all he could to protect himself. And he said this: "My escape from their hands, since the letter of the Pope to Jeff Davis has sharpened 1,000,000 of daggers, is more than a miracle." What about Lincoln's assassin, John Wilkes Booth? Here's the story you're going to get in revisionist history. He escaped to Maryland. They killed him in a barn. There never was a trial. There never was even what about all of the co-conspirators that we talked about? One that was hidden out at the Vatican. That's never talked about. We don't even know about the trial where Lincoln really, before he was president, really saved the life of a Catholic priest who was talking against the Vatican at the time and telling people in this country that they were here to overthrow and to, from within, take this country over and turn it back into fascism. We don't know about that trial in history, do we? People don't even know. I could probably ask you, I could go out today and say, what was President Lincoln's greatest accomplishment? Or who do you think killed President Lincoln? They'll go, John Wilkes Booth. Or they might not even know that. Well, history's going to tell you, I guess if you go and look at revisionist history, they're going to tell you that Booth was killed in some barn. However, there's another story. They've been doing this a long time. There's another story. People say he not only escaped prosecution, he lived to a ripe old age under an assumed name, David E. George, John St. Helen, among others. And that Booth died on January 13th, 1903, in Enid in the Oklahoma Territory, after voluntarily ingesting either strychnine or arsenic. Now, boy, to get to the bottom of these guys, what about, we've had reports, that they've done this maybe to Hitler. They tell you Hitler was killed in the bunker and people see him living high off the hog in Argentina. And this goes on and on and on. Now, not to get too deep into this, because we'll come back to some of the blood killings, maybe even sacrifices that this group gets involved with when people start figuring out their little secret hidden plan. But let's get on another subject here real quickly. When Trump, people asked me the other day after I did a couple of shows on Trump, they said, when did you realize he was going to be president? And I said, well, you can go back in my shows, and I said, when they chose him, this man was not going to do it unless he was assured of winning. There's no reason a billionaire with his wealth, he's a builder, a Freemason, etc., would do this. So there had to be, that was my thinking. But, that's pretty shallow. But anyway, that's what I thought. Then the second thing was the Al Smith dinner. Okay, now everybody knows, or maybe a lot of you don't know, the Al Smith dinner is where either the president or the two nominees sit on the left and right of the cardinal in New York, and they have this kind of roast or whatever. If they have a nice dinner, and in the background you got all the Knights of Malta and all the top guys sitting there. And boy, would I like to bug that place. I would like to bug the White House. Right? Put a bug right in, the hell, you hear these commentators today, oh, Trump and Obama are getting together, and there's going to be a peaceful transition of power. Well, of course there is. They all work on the same team. They just play different roles. Well, wouldn't you like to be a fly on the wall? No, I don't want to be a fly on the wall. What the hell? Flies can't hear or talk. I want to put a bug in there. Yeah, why not? They bug everybody else. The NSA, everybody, they know everything about everybody. Why the hell can't we bug them? You know why? Because then we figure out their hidden agenda. Wouldn't it be fun, though? I've tried to get in there and bug it. Oh, how did I try to do that? Well, you know what I did? I used to do these shows, and I created a character. Now, people used to think he was real. But let me tell you now, after I get older, I don't want to play games with you anymore. When I created Slats Grobnik, well, I didn't really create him. Mike Royko did. And when Mike, he was one of my hero journalists when I decided to be a journalist. And so I brought Slats Grobnik out, and he was the guy going around trying to do a building. Remember we had Slats building the Roman Colosseum in a Kansas farm? He still is there doing it. He's hidden away. He's building the Roman Colosseum, and I told you why we did that, why he was doing that. He wanted to put, he was going to sell tickets to the working class, the middle class, and then he was going to run, put the Republicans and Democrats, the Jesuits, and all the ecumenical people, and they were going to be in the arena. They were the gladiators, and we get to watch them fight to the death. Just like they did to all those Christians way back in the Roman Empire. That was a great idea he had. And I'll have to check up on Slats. But anyway, we did a few shows where he tried to sneak into that little tunnel between Georgetown University, which is the headquarters of our government, to the White House, and they have this little meeting room there so they can get their stuff together. And we tried to bug that. We tried to bug Georgetown. We tried to bug the White House. Slats was on his game, so to speak. But we never did quite get there. But anyway, he may try again. But wouldn't it be nice to have a little bug there to listen to what Obama and Trump were really saying? Well, let's just think about it for a second. Okay, the lights are, everybody's out. And Obama says to everyone, well, I'd like to speak to Donald alone. And so everybody's gone. They know that it's a quiet place. There, he turns off his tape recorder, so he can't. And Trump says, "Turn off the tape recorder because I don't want to be. I don't want you to use it against me." So they sit there alone now, and the first thing they both do is they both laugh their butts off. And Obama looks and says, "Now it's your turn. You do as much. I was playing their game. Now the Jesuits want you in here." And so they get on with this conversation, this hidden truth of really how they're playing the American people like a good old fiddle from Tennessee. And wouldn't that be nice to listen to that? Maybe we'll make up one of their conversations and see how close we get. But like I said, we have Trump in there. And I said yesterday that even I voted for him, and I've never voted in my life. And the reason I did was because there's a window of opportunity here for hardworking people, I believe. There's kind of a pause in the action. Every policy that Trump put out there. seems to benefit the working man, seems to benefit Christians, seems to benefit everybody. The Supreme Court's going to be conservative. Maybe we can get rid of Roe versus Wade. So there's this window of opportunity here. Let's try to get some people pardoned that need to get out of jail, like Tony Alamo. There's this movement that Christians are having a say again. And, like we said on one of our other shows, the evangelicals, the movement of evangelicals here is basically a Catholic movement. And throughout the course of our history, when the Pope puts his little blessing on the candidate he wants to win, the evangelical Catholic vote comes out in droves. And isn't it interesting that Trump, he got the most support from evangelicals and Catholics out of any Republican that's run in modern times. So that's quite interesting. So we know the Pope was anointing Trump for a reason. Why? Seems to be completely contrary to their New World Order plan of destroying, the middle class, the white civilization. What is going on here? That's for us to figure out. And maybe we'll have a couple little ideas to break this kind of idea, to figure out what are they really doing. But like I said, that question, let me check the time. How do you, man, this world. I remember I used to I got to get a new microphone too, because, I got about 6 minutes. My microphone broke, and now I have to use a old one, and my voice goes in and out a little bit, so hopefully it will get good reception. I'm going to go run and get a new mic and headphone today. So, the question was, when you came out and you said you knew Trump was going to win? Secondly, if you understand that the Cardinal in New York is probably the most powerful person in this country, and he's getting his marching orders from Rome through the Jesuit Black Pope, etc., etc. Now, he met with Clinton, the serial killer, pathological liar that she is, met with the Cardinal about a month before that meeting, that Al Smith dinner. Trump, instead, met with him just prior to that dinner, or the next day after, I can't remember. And I said, well, there's your man. There's your man getting his final marching orders. And so then I knew he was going to win. Basically, in my heart, I knew it. Then a number of other things were happening, and so it was pretty obvious that we have now a whole different agenda coming to Washington. How's that going to affect you? And what do they really have planned behind the scenes? I think they have something big planned, and we're going to get to that in a second. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to read to you an email I just got from a friend of mine that I've known since the 1980s. His name is Eric, and it's not Phelps. It's my friend from Rome that I knew in the 80s who lives in New Jersey. And, boy, we got a stoppage there in the action. Computer just stopped. But he's from New Jersey, and I've kept up talking to him for years. I've known him since the 80s. And very insightful, good thinking man, critical thinking. I've known him for a long time, and he sent me an email, and I think I want to share that with you. Okay, so we'll spend the last 5 minutes here talking about this email I got from Eric Galati. And Eric sent me this. And remember I said the other day that one of the other reasons I thought Trump would win is that Obama's been pretty good at creating such a foreign policy that's really created havoc overseas. I mean, he's done everything possible to make us look like jerks, and he's got, he's funding the migration of all these Syrians. He's destroying his foreign policy really has been chaos, what the Jesuits like. His domestic policy has been nothing more than just financial. I mean, people are living. There's more people in poverty here. There's more people on food stamps. You got a real problem with the middle class shrinking, and the more poor people are. It's getting to be. You can see it. You can feel it. Even though, they give you all these reports. You can feel that the middle class is shrinking, and there's rich and poor. But you don't see that much chaos, do you? And the reason is the left has been placated by a black president. And I'm not saying it's completely racial, but you got to admit that a lot of black people voted for him just because he was. Now, the minority isn't going to push the vote. He's got to have he's got to have a lot of other left-wing thinking people that like socialism in his camp. And if you remember back to the 60s, that was a huge group of people that were fighting against the establishment, the hippies, etc., etc. Well, when Trump came in, I said, one reason they want him is now the working man. See, if Clinton won, then most people that are conservative and working class and Christians will not go to the streets and riot. They'll accept it. But the left isn't accepting it. And boy, do you think, we're going to have to read this in the second half hour because I'm running out of time. So let me just expound a little bit. But do you think there's going to be chaos in the streets because of Trump? Well, that happened last night. You had protests in most every major city in America. And people said, well, the pundits say, well, this is just something that, they're a little upset now. That'll all fade away. I'm not too sure about that. So that's something you really have to think about. Could they be trying to create internal chaos? So that's why I said we have a window here for a while to get some good things done. And let's not forget that. And that's what my show yesterday was all about. But we can't also forget the Vatican, or the spiritual scoundrels, I call the Jesuits and the Vatican. Their real plan for us and all of the people that work for them. Their real plan, let's talk about it simply. It's a one world government, a one world religion. That hasn't stopped because Donald Trump is in office. What's happened, though, there's a little shift here for a while. The Hegelian dialectic at its best. And no better way than to keep people occupied, or to give them that really good feeling of hope, than to just pull the rug right out from under them while they're doing other things. Look, our foreign policy hasn't gotten better yet. This country's still suffering financially and economically. Trump has some good ideas, and if you put them in, they'd of course work. And I think he will do some things. But here's the real deal. How long do we have to do certain things that we'd like to get done before the you-know-what hits the fan? So that's why I say, let's not procrastinate here. Let's take it for what it is. Let's understand them as best we can, even though we can't really get to every little thing in this hidden agenda. And people that tell you that are basically probably working for them, because you can't understand exactly every little plan they have in the future. We know generally what they want. But I want to read to you in the next half hour. We'll start out with this idea that Trump's presidency will cause chaos amongst the left, agitators being paid, etc., to create civil unrest to a point we haven't seen in a long, long time. Think about that. And we'll get back to you, yes, right after a 3-minute break. I'm going to have a cup of coffee. I'm going to check out this meeting that Obama is now meeting with Trump. So we're going to check out. They're going to go, well, let's transfer power peacefully while the people are rioting in the streets. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. Don't forget to go to my show, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. every evening on First Amendment, and get people, send it out to people. We're not sponsored by any corporate associations, and so we need your support, word of mouth, and let's see if we can get more people on board. Okay, the question I said is, has Trump been chosen to represent America as the corporate head of Washington, D.C., for the reason of creating a lot of civil unrest in this country? Here's a letter I got from a friend of mine I've known since the 80s, Eric Galati, and he sent this to me, and here's what he said about that issue. He said, "Now please, be attentive to what I compose. Be patient and view the entire show I sent you, especially sent me this video, which was interesting, especially the first 15 minutes. This is very clear logic, subversive yet intelligent, of the left already preparing for war now that Mr. Donald John Trump, J. Trump, has been elected President of the United States." You got to listen, he says, to the left's idea here, where they compare him to a dysfunctional nuclear war missile, which must be contained. After the episode, the next 4 or 5, which should automatically load, show the shocking physical action of her mentality, the left's mentality, with not tens, not hundreds, but thousands of protesters in every major American city marching, and this was yesterday, against Mr. Trump. It is most shocking in Manhattan, where there are, on Fifth Avenue, at least 10,000 people. Security has to be put into emergency positions. Ice and sand trucks are now used for when they use them for major snowstorms. They're put in front of the residence of the Trump Tower of Mr. Trump. They were put there yesterday. And his family to block forced entrance by protesters. And as reported last night upon his victory, to prevent a speeding car with explosives to crash through the normal police barriers. So that's what's going on now in Central Park, or in Fifth Avenue, where Trump Towers is located, and he lives. And Eric says this, he says, Eric Galati, when I see this taking place all prepared and pre-planned by communist minds and financed, if not by Mr. George Soros, definitely by other subversives' wealth, I get sick and I think of possible murder of the Trump family, just like the Bolsheviks did to the Tsar and his family. I do not exaggerate. Ex-members of the Weather Underground are also at work, as in Chicago earlier this year. We are possibly at war internally now. This is it. The election was the easy part. Please do not be lazy, he says, and skip anything. Watch this entire show by Rachel Maddow. So you can go to that, MSNBC, Rachel Maddow show. Just Google it. And this woman isn't an idiot, and you must know the enemy as you know your comrades, your people. You must have this inculcated into your psyches if you care and to realize that this is a confrontation of the spiritual against the material. You may have to download Adobe Flash to get into this. So he says this, pray for our leaders and be attentive around. Watch what's going on. This is just the tip of the iceberg, not only here in America but elsewhere. Americans and English commentators elsewhere have already in their sights. There's a lot going on in France, he says. So he says, God bless, and thank you. Okay, thank you, Eric, for sending that. And all you had to do is turn on the TV yesterday. Now, the commentators are saying, oh, don't worry, they're just blowing off a little steam. This will end. I think it may go much deeper. But anyway, we'll have to wait and see about that. Okay, let's switch gears here a little bit and use the last 20 minutes or so to talk about big media, entertainment, the influence it has on the population. And I think if you listen to many of my shows recently, I did, during the course of the elections, the campaigns, I did maybe 23-part series on what I call the greatest off-Broadway stage play in the history of our country and the world, the 2016 elections. And I was very quick to point out that this is nothing more than watching a Hollywood movie. However, it's kind of a reality show combined. And these are actors given a script, and they're there to lead you in a certain direction for a certain purpose, which makes it even more dangerous than a Hollywood movie. But don't get me wrong, people today, the Jesuits have been doing this for a long time, and I think you have to, and you know, I get so much criticism when I say that because they don't control Hollywood, the Jews control Hollywood. And I said, did you ever hear what's called a papal court Jew? Yes. Look at the Knesset. Look at Israel. Controlled behind the scenes by the Vatican. And the average Jewish person is just like the average American person, left in the dark. But anyway, Hollywood's no different. So the Vatican has been involved in Hollywood for years. All you have to do is go back to the early 60s, the 50s, when they were changing their image with people like Bing Crosby doing all of these. You got to go back and watch some of those old movies. He plays a priest, and there's a number of these movies changing the image of the Vatican to the Protestant, even back in the 50s and 60s, or when Reagan started to then have diplomatic relations with the state Vatican. See, they're a state. They have three different identities, and they use each one. when it serves their purpose. Spiritual identity, they have a state identity, they have a financial identity. It's an incredible way to do just about anything, deceive anyone. And when Reagan brought that in, there were lawsuits galore by the Jewish Federation and the Protestants who were saying, hey, you can't give this group special treatment. And the judges, who are all bought and paid for by the Vatican, just threw the cases out. So they were changing their image back then. Now, if you go back to Jesuit theater in the 1500s and 1600s, that's how they were controlling people. We've even done shows on their connection, how they created Shakespeare, who really wasn't the writer of all those plays. And it's an amazing story, and we did many, many stories with scholars from England. I had a couple people on who'd researched this, spent their life researching this subject. But does it make the light of day here? No. And let me tell you why. Because if you go back and study Jesuit theater and what they were doing back then, they were becoming very, very in tune at realizing you can control a population through entertainment. So remember, I was reading for the last couple of days a little chapter from a book called The Romantic Depression. Not romantic, Romanic, or the Rome Depression, the Jesuit Depression. Let's use a little bit of that today, and I'll paraphrase as well as give you my comments. From this book, it says big media is a megaphone of the Jesuits, or let's call them spiritual scoundrels. It's the means by which they disseminate, I said spiritual scoundrels, by which they disseminate news to the American people. See what I mean? The media, entertainment, that's the megaphone. That's how, what was this election like? Like I said, it was like a movie. It was so, this wasn't, you didn't hear about all the major issues. All you were worried about was all of the soap opera behind it. News about politics and their politicians. News about health care and their health. News about education of their children. Any news whatsoever is constructed by these spiritual Jesuit scoundrels, presented in a very slick production by people who can't help but ogle and drool over all of it. That's why you had so many people, historic amounts of people watching this election. The average American can be led by the nose, folks, quite easily. And I'll paraphrase here as evidenced from this book, latest statistics on how often Americans watch various forms of news and especially entertainment on TV. Now here's what I wanted to add. I always wanted to mention this. People get their news from social media, TV. And let me tell you why. When I grew up, people still read newspapers. Newspapers were still important. And they weren't all controlled by Rupert Murdoch and the Knights of Malta, and there were many independent papers, and they were very important in an election process. And in fact, if you went into a coffee shop, you could actually see people reading newspapers. And how do you see that now? Now you see people sticking their nose in their iPhone. Social media, they don't go to newspapers. In fact, let me give you a statistic that tells you that. In this election, there were 57 newspapers that backed Hillary Clinton, endorsed Hillary Clinton. There were 2 newspapers that endorsed Donald Trump. Trump won anyway. Newspapers don't matter. People don't read. They don't get their hands full of ink anymore. So social media is the key. You think the Jesuits and these spiritual scoundrels don't know that? Why do you think they put gatekeepers into the social media, gatekeepers into every avenue of your life? They want to control you there too. That's where people get it now. So I'm telling you, you've got to watch out even more on the internet than you do on TV. TV has just become, we know these talking heads have just become like actors. Most of them, like, you can even go to Fox News and you watch that Megyn Kelly. She acts like she should be running a Hollywood movie set. More people are concerned about her hairstyle and the dress she wears than what the hell she says. So anyway, the average American can be led pretty easily, people have over the years, as evidenced by these statistics, especially entertainment on TV. And I'm not even getting into entertainment on the computer. More than 5 hours a day, depending on age and ethnic group. Imagine this. If you're glued to the TV for hours at a time, or glued to the internet, entertainment portion of the internet, this mindless entertainment or manufactured news, how much of this information do you think will you absorb? One answer comes from a sociological, says the Romantic Depression, sociological and psychological studies on what people tend to talk about in everyday conversations. Now this is interesting, and you got to listen. Poor people, I don't know if you consider yourself rich or poor. I consider myself poor. I mean, when you really look at it, what is the difference between rich and poor? Poor people talk about characters in TV shows, the lottery, how to get rich quick. They do not talk of wishes and dreams. Now, maybe I talk a lot about wishes and dreams, but, let's just talk about the average Joe. I'm the average Joe. But anyway, this is a study done, so you're going to have to generalize a bit. They don't talk about wishes and dreams, how to attain meaningful goals, how to get educated and get a great job. Poor people also gamble much more than any other economic group. They eat more junk food than any other group. They do more illegal drugs, abuse alcohol than any other group. And poor people watch more TV than any other group. Interestingly, poor people over the past 50 years have had a new neighbor. So here's what I'm talking about. This is the Jesuit plan in action. That's why you've seen our economy gutted for the last 20, 30 years. Coincidentally, Reagan with his system didn't, gave a quick fix. That's why I said, look back to Reagan. During those first couple of years, you had a little quick fix. Let's get some things done in these years, because it's not going to be pretty down the road. I have a feeling it's going to mirror that. But ever since then, the middle class has been whittled away. And so when you're considering poor and rich, where does this middle class? So am I middle class? Are you middle class? Let's listen to what this study said. It said, and poor people watch more TV, right? Interestingly, poor people over the past 50 years have had a new neighbor introduced to their lowly society, the middle class America. Now more than ever, the poor class is swelling to consume close to half of the American population. Now, isn't that interesting? Aren't they the easiest to control if you keep them like that? And the Jesuits, these spiritual scoundrels, have nearly concluded their takeover of the American population. Not just via politics, but also by many other means that attract hook, line, and sinker to pull unsuspecting people in. Okay, interesting. So let's let's figure this out. So for the last 50 years, with this changeover we've had, usually you'll get 8 years of left-wing people, then 8 years of right-wing people, and now we're shifting to conservatism. And if Trump's policies were ever put into place, a lot of this stuff could be erased. All their hard work of getting people poor to control them could be erased. So my thinking is, I don't know if they want to go that far, do you? They might go for a little while to give you this false sense of hope. But I believe they're driven, if you believe in their premise, that they want to basically destroy Western civilization through the use of radical Islamic terrorism as a way to do that, as well as civil unrest, then there's a whole different story going on here. I'm not a genius in how every little thing that they do, but I can see a pattern. At least we can get to that pattern. So let's go further. Politics, folks, is just one means of the way you control people. And that is the primary purpose of politics. They want to control you, your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, everything you do, regardless of your candidate you vote for. And I said yesterday, or the day before, it was a couple days before, one day before the election, I always do a show that says, how have we gotten to this point? Look at the people that are representing us. When you really look behind the scenes, we got a serial killer, a pathological liar, saying she represents women and children. And on the other hand, we have a Freemason builder coming out of nowhere, billionaire. And I'm going, God, how have we gotten to this point? And we did that on another show. But if you understand the primary purpose is to control you, not to turn you into a thinking person, not to get good people with sound moral values into the office that controls you. If you can understand that they're ruling, these evil people are rulers of evil people too. They have to have a disorderly society in order to function, and then they can turn themselves into these fake protectors of the world. Today's political landscape is tightly controlled by these spiritual Jesuit scoundrels. And all you have to do is look at the top tiers of corporations, the top tiers of government, all controlled by them. And these are the people who actually do their bidding and ensure that their business runs according to the playbook designed and implemented by the Jesuits. See, folks, the average person thinks he has a say in politics because he takes time to vote. I took time yesterday as a symbol because I think there's a narrow window here to get some things done. And, these people donate to their favorite candidates, support the party. But, folks, that's so far from the truth. Policies and all of these things are not decided by popular vote, but by predetermined actions and outcomes done behind the scenes. That's why it's important to try and figure it out the best you can by putting everything together and getting to their plan. They've got something planned in the future already. And it has nothing to do with us, the average American. You're not in their club. The only thing they do is they steer the average American in any direction they wish from time to time. And let's read this. Since its inception, America and her politics have been designed and controlled and manipulated by the most prolific society in modern history. They are the finest ghostwriters of both secret and public works of law that work behind the scenes of public policies that affect everyone, of popular books, and influence millions of various ages. These men are the most persuasive recruits of world-class talent. They use to create works of art that manipulate the minds and souls of the population. Stories, paintings, etc., etc. Political. Remember the Patriot Act after 9/11? That was written before 9/11. 300-odd pages that the Congress never read, written by a Jesuit lawyer named Vindim from Vietnam. See, the members of these people, these highly secret societies, are basically worker bees and ants. According to this, I'm reading you now a little paragraph from Romantic Depression. Never taking credit for their own work, but rather allowing some public figure to accept the credit. Because the Jesuits, these spiritual scoundrels, and I add that word, spiritual scoundrel, know the public will be drawn to this charismatic person. Wow, Donald Trump's pretty charismatic, and that person can be controlled and manipulated against their will behind the scenes to do the bidding of the Cardinal of New York, the Black Pope, etc. Now, in the final few minutes here, let's look at this. Okay, remember I told you about the Clinton crime family? I only have 3 minutes, so we'll finish it tomorrow. But just let me say this. American politics follow these patterns. The Jesuits, like I said in the outset of this show, controlled by murder, with controlled and manipulating politicians following prepared scripts written by them. So, those women and men who obey these rules are rewarded with long careers in politics, or even when they leave politics in total disgrace, like the Clintons will leave, they're going to be taken care of. They've been making millions off of this because of their loyalty to the Black Pope, the Jesuits, and their plan of world domination. These unlucky few politicians, though, who depart from their script, politicians are people who work that may get in the way, who stray too far from these goals, are removed from office either through embarrassing scandals, threats, or murder. We can go back to President Henry Harrison, served only 32 days in office, and we can go through those. Remember how we used to go through the list of presidents that have been assassinated by the Jesuits in old times? And back in the 1800s, there were people that even said it in the newspapers, if you check it out. They've been trying to get rid of all that information. But that was quite interesting when you go back to Harrison, the killing of Lincoln, etc. like that. And what was it? He spent 32 days in office, that's Harrison, as president from March 4th to April 4th, 1841, before these scoundrels, Jesuits, poisoned him, as a message to all others who would oppose their authority. The Jesuits also brutally murdered all but one of Harrison's family, leaving John Scott Harrison, he was a lawyer, a member of Congress from Ohio, to carry the message to would-be dissenters in the future. Curiously, Congress granted that president's heir, ultimately only John Harrison, $25,000 in compensation for their loss, although the bill supporting it was hotly contested by both parties. I don't have time to go into this long list, but it goes on today. Nothing changes, just their tactics. If we could ask Vince Foster, who was getting in, he was a bagman too. He knew about all the Maine, Arkansas, Clinton drug money. Why we know he was killed. But you know what? Nobody talks about it on either side of the aisle. Why? They don't want to incur the same fate, maybe. We'll be back tomorrow on the Investigative Journal. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a good evening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.